Hello. It's so lovely to see you guys. I'm going to take my glasses off because I feel like I can kind of reach in and be close with you all that way. So, my name's Claire Venus. I am a writer, creative producer, and mentor, and I wanted to do a little video to say how much I am enjoying the space on Substack a year down the line. So, it's now May 2023, and I started back in April 2022. And when I first started there, it was really just a space for me to carve out what I wanted to say. So, what I wanted to say long form, away from distractions, in a space that felt interesting because there was lots of professional writers there, and there was a team who were being really open and honest about creating this kind of social network, this kind of new media form of being. It was like, wow, okay, yeah, let's do some writing here. So my husband had started a Substack and he was like, you need to be on here, you'll love it. So I started writing, and I really got into the fact that it was so refreshing just to have a long form space that worked. So when I had a WordPress blog, there was a time where that worked quite well for me, and I felt like I understood what WordPress wanted and how to kind of amalgamate SEO and all that stuff. And then I changed my kind of plugins on WordPress, and it just became really dysfunctional and very difficult to make it look the way I wanted it to look. And that is a real bone of contention for me, because the way that I read and understand the world on the internet is as a kind of a visual person. So the visuals will hook me in, and then I'll start reading what somebody's got to say. So the visuals are always the first kind of the shop window, if you like. For me, it's just the way I experience the world. So there's a sliding scale, I think, of how we are and have got used to what the internet's got to offer us. So those kind of gifts that exist, if anybody kind of puts those in a social media feed, I'm like, oh, my eyes. But if someone sends me one on a WhatsApp message, I love that. It's a right giggle. So I think we're all navigating this noisy space, and it's not just noisy because it's got a lot of people on it. Well, it's got all of us on it, hasn't it? Not all of us, but you know what I mean. It's this space of constant entertainment, constant refreshing, constant change. Can you remember when you could scroll to the end of your Facebook homepage, your feed, like it was like, that's it for the day, done. Substack for me was that. It was that. I don't have any other social media on my phone, so I put Instagram on for 3 days a week, and then it gets deleted, and then it was a Substack. So with Substack, it was like I could finish Substack. I felt complete. I'd finished it. I'd read what I wanted to read. I'd commented where I wanted to comment on their kind of open office hours spaces, and my phone went away. And that in itself is so precious. You know, when we're grappling all the time about staying present with our kids or just in life and off our phones, it was like, oh, here's a way to actually finish the internet. And that felt amazing. So it meant that I was reading more books, that I felt more present, that I didn't feel like my brain was being hijacked all the time. It was just such a conscious place to be as a creator and a writer. And as I wrote more on Substack, I realized how much potential there was there to share my words with more people, to understand who was attracted to write there too. A lot of like-minded folk, to be honest, but not in that kind of echo chambery way. Like there were a lot of people really different to me. I encouraged all of my content club clients to come and join Substack, and they all merrily followed away. I answered lots of questions on Instagram that people had about setting up Substacks. And then I moved my mailing list there, which felt amazing. In November, it was like really clear that I could design something really beautiful for those people that I've been holding since 2017. And yeah, delivered a masterclass on Substack, which is still available as a replay if you want to check that out, and built a course, a 4-week self-directed course. And that course is really a container for taking up space. It's a container for taking up creative space. It's a container for exploring what Substack could be for you. Like the mistakes that I've seen people make is they're like, oh, okay, well, I'll just talk about my business there, or I'll just have it as a kind of a carved out space for creative writing, and it can only ever be that. It can be multiple things if that's what you want. And I think that's why I love it so much, because I am a multi-passionate and will have a multi-hyphen career. I do lots of different things, and it feels like as I grow into that space, there's space for all of that there, and I can guide people really easily around what those parts of my career are, what those parts of my interests are, and the things that I want to talk about. So that's why I built the course, because I think I have a really unique perspective on what Substack can offer to creators. I'm really excited about it, the platform, and I spend time on there every day. Like, so at the moment, I probably need like a day of like detox from it, because I have kind of just grown into spending time on it every day, both on desktop and on my phone app. In April, Substack brought in something called Notes, which is very, very similar to what we would expect to see on a social media feed. So it's most like the Twitter feed, but it doesn't feel like Twitter. Twitter is really bad for my nervous system. I just literally can't go on there. I really dislike it. But Notes doesn't feel like that, because what you're able to do is see notes from just the people who subscribe to your publication on Substack, or the people you subscribe to. So it already kind of narrows that down. What it has meant, though, is you can't finish Substack. So back to my analogy of finishing the internet, like there isn't a way now. Like there's constant noise. I'm going to say noise. There is constant noise. There's constant noise because we're bringing all of our experience of what it's like to show up on other social media platforms and testing it on Substack. We're going, is this self-promotion? Shall I ask a question? Shall I share a photo of my cat? I don't have a cat. You know what I mean? So there's a bit of that. And then there are these beautiful spaces of long form sort of threads and conversations, and you feel like you just get a real insight into who somebody is. So away from the vanity metrics of social media, which is one of the reasons I like Substack, you just get to know people. You know, you're not saying, oh, well, they've got like X number of followers on Instagram, so that means they're a voice, you know, of leadership in this field. Like you just don't see any of that. You just see the person. So whatever people have attached to them in terms of numbers of subscribers or other accolades, it's less easy to see that stuff, which means that you just have genuine human connection. And that is why it's such a brilliant place to be and spend time. On that note and that depth of human connection, what I have seen slightly since Notes came in is two things. There's a tiny bit of AI going on. So there's that bit of a comment that reads like a real person, but actually they're not. You know, they're essentially a very sophisticated bot. So that exists on Substack. I've seen it multiple times, like not loads, but it is there. You're always going to get the people that use that platform in a way that is egotistical and very driven around what their prerogatives are about life and the internet and all that sort of stuff. There is a little bit of that, but you have to look hard to find that if you know, showing up in a kind of way that feels purposeful and aligned for you. Like it's not easy to stumble across that stuff. One of my tips would be to avoid the home page in Notes, because it's like everything that's gathering traction. So you might end up sort of, you know, accidentally seeing something about politics or something really inflammatory that someone's tried to, bit like Twitter really. So there's not loads of it, but it does exist. I think as well as people are putting on and realizing that it's a really good business development and business growth tool, we're seeing this kind of, like, I call it's a bit like fake friendships. It's like they pretend like, oh yeah, you know, that's so interesting what you've got to say. They're not interested at all. They're just adding to their long list of comments on an article, so it looks like they've got, you know, tens of however many hundreds of comments. So you know, that is what it is, isn't it? Like I find this a lot with people with bigger platforms. You might get one response and that's maybe all that they can manage. But if you open up the conversation again, it doesn't then go anywhere else. And that's a really easy way to tell, firstly, how much capacity someone has. You know, they might have a team of people responding to comments. You know, I work with somebody who does that for a living, who has to respond to comments on social media platforms, you know. So if you want to go deeper than that and go underneath all of that, the way to do that is, you know, yes, follow the big writers with the big platforms if that's what you want to do, but find out who else is there, because there are lots of people that have got really sophisticated, nuanced, brilliant things to say that do not have big teams around them. I feel like I'm one of them now, you know. I feel like, yeah, I've got some good stuff to say. Like I'll say that, like I feel confident in that, you know, to say sometimes what I write about is really interesting and really well, it's always heartfelt, but I feel like it really lands with people and people say really beautiful things and then there's a lovely exchange. So yeah, I think it was just that where that had bubbled to in the last little while, as I've seen the kind of larger writers sort of cotton on. There's also something on Substack where people can be paid to be there. So they sign a year-long contract, maybe longer. I don't know how it works, but I know that those exist. And people are not transparent about that. So they don't say, I'm working for Substack now, unless they are on the Substack payroll. So unless they're the Substack part of the Substack team, they won't say that. So that's hidden. So again, if you're going on there, like trying to look for genuine connection, is another reason to like seek out the smaller fish. And it's not like it'll be obvious, you know, you might just have heard a name somewhere and everybody rushes to follow the big names, don't they? And that's of course, like they've earned their place and they're incredible writers in lots of ways. But in terms of the community element, if you want to feel part of something and you want to feel in a space that is a shared circle, rather than, you know, you're sat in a circle with everybody else and somebody's in the middle on a podium shouting at you with all their views, like the shared circle exists, like it's there, you know, there's so many of us who are just genuinely there for human connection. It's a beautiful place for that. The other things I love about it is that you can podcast there, so you can record directly into Substack and record a podcast or a voice note for your subscribers. You can also apply for video, which I have, which is really, really great for my membership. So I have a membership hosted on there. And one of the things that I really wanted to do is share more of my creative practice. So more of how I use my creativity, both in my work, but also for my well-being. So that's what I'm doing over there. I hope this is super useful. I'm going to post this in a place where you'll see the other offers that I have around Substack, so that you'll see that. But yeah, I just really wanted to share where I am a year down the line. I should also say, you know, if you are interested in growth and numbers, like that is possible there. So I have doubled my mailing list numbers since I started on Substack. So actually it was faster than that really, because I moved that mailing list over in November and I was sort of just playing around between April and November. So November to May, what is that, sort of 7 months? So 7 months to double my mailing list. So numbers, which feels really incredible. And it feels really, at the moment, it feels really good. And I feel really happy about that quiet ambition that I've got to grow that space, because I am showing up probably 90% of the time online for Substack as a platform. You know, if we were kind of taking other platforms into account, it's 90% Substack. So that feels really good. I think there'll come a point where I feel like that needs to slow down, but I've never been there, because with social media, you can gather more followers quite easily, but it doesn't really tip the balance in terms of the amount of work that you've got to do. And by work, I mean like that connected work of showing up for your people. I think that has been so gradual for me on Instagram, Twitter, and the other platforms, that I've never experienced that kind of tip into like, I can't do all of this now as one person. And I'm really cautious and curious around, if that does tip, like what does that mean? Like what does that mean for me as a human plugged into these other humans? But also, what does it mean in terms of like the way I can show up and draw boundaries around it? So yeah, there are some brilliant people in the field of managing large numbers of subscribers and all of that sort of stuff online to look to, but that's not what this video is about. This video is just about circling and human connection. So yeah, I'll leave it there, but thanks so much for tuning in, and do let me know if you've got any questions about Substack or the things that I offer.